Devil's on the loose and he's dancing with the mummy.
Deep from the bowels of the Macabre Theater Laboratory, we bring you Macabre Cast. There is nothing wrong with your streaming service. You are exactly where you should be, where the slush puppy machine is always on and cold. Your favorite horror mag is on the rack, discreetly displayed between Women's Wear Daily and Cosmopolitan. I'm your host, Dark Mark, along with my mold-ridden counterpart, Karis, the Little Mummy, here to bring you another episode of Macabre Cast, where we'll be dropping R's where they belong and adding them where they don't. This is a safe space for those who remember patiently waiting for the TV guide to arrive each week in the mail so you could scour it with your yellow highlight marker for each late-night creature feature film scheduled to be shown. Newbies welcome, regulars welcome back, and worshippers, get out of here. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and tell a friend to do the same. Even that guy that will argue with you every time claiming Jaws is not a horror film. Yeah, that guy. If you wish to interact with fellow monster kids, follow the Facebook page, Macabre Theater. It's there where you can send me a voice message through Messenger and become part of this show. A link to the page can be found in the description of this episode. Macabre Cast episode 131 begins now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Toro il cast Macabre.
So the topic I put out there, Karis, is continuity.
Continuity?
Yes, there was a time in Hollywood when they had a little bit of responsibility to have writers good enough in a franchise to come up with a story that kept with the continuity of the last film.
Yeah, well, most of the time, they didn't do so well.
But now they're more lazy than ever because, if an audience didn't like it or they painted themselves into a corner, it's like fast food. Disposable, you know what I'm saying? They start over again. And apparently this is okay.
I don't think they care if it's okay with us or not. Hollywood is about making money, not continuity. Everybody knows that. I think half the time they've got AI writing for them anyway.
Oh, that's terrible.
Winter is right around the corner, and it made me think of something.
What's that?
What do you call a snowman with six-pack abs?
Gee, I don't know, Karis. What do you call a snowman with six-pack abs?
The abdominal snowman.
And on that note...
Life's river showers, she said, open only the strong shall spray. She said, but I'm feeling quite weak. She said.
In a recent interview, Sigourney Weaver stated she read a script treatment by Walter Hill for Alien 5 that is very different from anything that we've ever had before, and for a treatment, it's very strong, she says. At this stage, who knows if this will actually happen? But I guess as fans, we can hope. Good Boy, the haunted house film starring a dog, drops on Shudder on November 21st. Green River Killer just wrapped production, a film about the real-life serial killer Gary Ridgway, who killed 49 prostitutes. It'll star David Arquette and Nick Stahl. Stranger Things Season 5, which went into production at the start of 2024, will finally be releasing Volume 1 of 3 on November 26, 2025. Hope it was worth the wait. Silent Night, Deadly Night, the remake, will drop in theaters December 12th. However, I don't think this will be surrounded by even a fraction of the controversy the original had. Gremlins 3 is officially moving forward with Steven Spielberg executive producing. And that's it for horror news.
She said,
And Draven agrees. Draven the blood-vomiting bat.
Children of the night, what music they make.
Del Toro's Frankenstein finally dropped on Netflix. Those of you who know me know how I feel about The Shape of Water, and you probably thought I was going to skip this one. I can't skip a film that capitalizes on the classic monsters that I love so much. If you really know me, then you know I was going to watch it if it had Frankenstein in it. No, it was nothing like The Shape of Water. Thank God. This film was very well made, and as my son Jack-O-Lantern pointed out, it had a lot of callbacks to the Hammer films that I love so much. And I see what he's saying, although it did, but maybe not as much as I would like to have seen. It's not my favorite retelling of the famous tale, and I'm very partial to Kenneth Branagh's version, and I know it was ripped apart by critics, and most people I've talked to don't like it at all, but I really like Kenneth Branagh's version of Frankenstein. I just thought it was very good. Oscar Isaac gives great performance as Victor Frankenstein. Mia Goth, although she's done fantastic in her other films, I personally felt she was miscast in this. You know what? I dislike the entire cast of Coppola's Dracula, so what do I know? I'm so glad that the scenes with the blind man who befriends Frankenstein were included in this. And as I've said, if you are a Frankenstein fan, you more than likely will enjoy Del Toro's version. Laura Horror, who hates Frankenstein films because she deems them sad, really enjoyed this one. Maybe even more than I did. But Dark Mark does recommend Del Toro's Frankenstein. Boy, oh boy, Karis, there are some ignorant people that walk among us.
Oh, yeah? How do you mean?
Well, I'm talking about the people at work, which I don't usually do. Well, not on here anyway. And needy? Oh my. Some needy people there. If we ever needed a zombie apocalypse to thin the herd, it would be now. But enough of that. So while everyone else is checking out Welcome to Derry, I've been watching Peacock. John Carpenter has a series called Suburban Screams. Picture forensic files where the actual victims get interviewed and we witness what happened through dramatic reenactments with actors. The show focuses on suburban happenings, supernatural, violent crime, stories that are above and beyond the norm. I've seen 2 of the 6 so far, and I'm really enjoying it.
Hey, look who's coming up the walkway to the lab. Horror chat, Matt.
Hey, Doc Mark, Little Cars, and all the Monster Kids hang out at the theater this week. It's Horror Chat Matt checking in. So, Doc, your report on Dudley Road was awesome. Sometimes the truth is scarier than fiction. Thanks for the in-depth report on that and clearing up some old urban legends from my childhood. As far as the topic this week about continuity in horror movies, myself personally, I love it. I don't necessarily need it. I prefer it, but don't need it. I understand why studios feel the need to try and do away with it, as it makes a new audience have difficulty breaking into the established world and timeline. But you know what? At the end of the day, really all they want is the franchise name and the name recognition. Just look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or like you said, Halloween, with how many times in different timelines they've rebooted and restarted that thing. And as far as I'm concerned, just make a good movie. People are going to go. And you can make it accessible without having to know 40 years worth of backstory. And speaking of 40 years worth of backstory, I actually went to the movie theaters this weekend and I took in the new Predator Badlands movie. And I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Fair warning, it is definitely a Predator movie that has been Disney-fied. Don't be fooled by the 20th Century Fox logo at the beginning of this thing. This is a Disney production. It's by the same team that did Prey and the animated Killer of Killers for Hulu. But this one's going up onto the big screen, so I think Mickey Mouse had a lot more input as to what they were going for here. I was a little put off by the PG-13 rating, but it's just as violent as you want in a Predator movie. The only difference was there was no red blood, and that's all I'll say about that. I'm curious to see what they will do with this franchise, as it was left on a bit of a cliffhanger. And overall, I like the new direction that Disney's been going with Predator, so it should be a fun ride. I also took in another movie. I'm not so sure about this one. I don't think it has the wide appeal that a Predator would have. Even for this group, this subject matter is a bit strange. But I watched Bone Lake. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's worth watching, but the subject matter is kind of bizarre in the twist that this thing takes. The story was pretty good, kind of generic. We've seen it a bunch of times. A couple shows up to Airbnb and another couple's there, and they're there on the wrong weekend. And this thing starts off going 100 miles per hour and very gory and graphic. I was like, wow, this is going to be a fun ride. But then for a 90-minute movie, it actually felt like it was 2.5 hours. The middle stretch, while interesting, certainly started to drag. And then about the last 15 minutes, the action ramps up again. Overall, I'd say it's worth a watch, but so like I said, just some weird subject matter. And the only other thing I've really been watching in the horror world is Welcome to Derry. It's kind of iffy. As much as I love the book, this is a controversial statement, I didn't love the original TV series, miniseries. The movies that just came out a couple of years ago that this is a prequel to are enjoyable, but the CGI is just way too much and wonky. And I feel that this TV show also kind of suffers from that. I do like the fact that they're building a Stephen King universe. There's been ties to The Dark Tower and The Shining and all sorts of little Easter eggs if you keep your eyes open. It's worth a watch if you like the movie. That's about it for this week. As always, make mine Macabrecast.
Yeah, Horror Chat, with the whole continuity thing, if you're going to go forward and make a franchise, then follow through with the continuity. Follow it. And don't just assume people won't remember, because most of us do.
And here comes the cliff. And just before the car went off the cliff, he jumped free. And all the kids cheered. But I didn't cheer. I stood right up and started shouting, "This isn't what happened last week. Have you all got amnesia? They just cheated us. This isn't fair. He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car."
As always, so great to hear from you, Horror Chat Matt, and hope to hear from you again next week.
This burning heart of mine, it still hurts after all this time. This burning heart in me won't let me be, won't let me be. This burning heart of mine, it still hurts after all this time. This burning heart in me won't let me be. Won't you let me be?
Hey, you ever wish you were the coolest monster kid on the street? Now you can be. Macabrecast shirts, beanies, and now Java mugs. Message Doc for Venmo info.
Blood Vessel from 2019, directed by Justin Dix. It's 1945, somewhere in the North Atlantic. Nazis have torpedoed a hospital ship. 7 survivors are left adrift in a life raft. After many days, they come across a German ship. Once aboard, they realize it's abandoned, a ghost ship on the water, so to speak. While investigating, they stumble upon some very strange things. And then all hell breaks loose in a very Romanian way, if you know what I mean. The acting is subpar. Most notable is Christopher Kirby as Jackson, but unfortunately, he isn't around very long. The weakest link is John Lloyd Fillingham as Faraday. He's this story's Dr. Smith a la Lost in Space, just not as good. All said and done, this is a fun monster romp and worth a watch. Dark Mark rates this 3 out of 5 stars.
Hi, Macabre Theater. It's Grim Kim checking in. How are you? I've missed you all. I've been listening. Just haven't been able to contribute in a variety of ways lately. But I wanted to touch base and say hello and talk about Dark Mark's prompt for this week, which had to do with continuity. And I appreciate and value continuity. I don't like when movies just glom on to the name of their most popular original movie, and then it's like, yeah, we're just going to use this, title because it'll draw people in. No, our story has nothing to do with the original story. Strangers had done it recently. I know that. One franchise I won't begrudge that is Final Destination comes to mind because they can be standalone stories. It's okay as far as the continuity, but for the most part, I value and appreciate that. In fact, recently I saw, I don't know, it was like a little explanation sheet of the Hell House LLC franchise because there's a certain order to events and they jump around a lot. So it showed the order of events, but what movie this order of events is in. And then it got into which order should you actually watch the movies in. I don't need to get into that. I'm not that familiar with the franchise itself. But I found it interesting and I really appreciate their wanting to be continuity and tie the movies together and tie the timelines together for sure, just to make it more of a universe. And so I tend to, I think, maybe say what Mark is thinking, and I do appreciate continuity of script, storyline, characters, all that when it comes to movies. A couple things I've watched with my movie buddy lately was Midsummer, which is one of my favorites. He certainly didn't enjoy it as much as I do, but it's one of those movies I could watch over and over, and that's saying something. I started to watch it, Welcome to Derry. I'm enjoying it a lot. I usually fall asleep in the middle of the show every week, and then I watch it a second time. But I am very, very much enjoying it, for sure. I didn't have high hopes. I think a lot of people felt that way. And so far, so good. This week, I'd say, one thing I had my movie buddy watch was Sporloose, which is I think it's Danish version, The Vanishing. And it was English dubbed, I believe. Maybe it was just subtitled. Again, it was easy to follow. It is such a good movie. The American version, although good, they Americanize it and try to turn the whole damn ending around, which I don't like. It was okay, the American one, as a standalone movie, but I would just recommend you just watch this original to begin with, and it's a top movie for me. Haven't seen anything or wanted to rent anything too recently on the TV, but I'm in the middle of compiling my movie catalog of all these things that I really, really want to see, and it's just so vast and endless. It's hard to kind of categorize it and organize it, but one part is Turner Classic Movies. They did TCM Underground 100, and it's a list of 100 movies, indies, weirds, cult classics, things that are evocative or important, and Eraserhead makes the list, and different things like that, and some I've never heard of, so I would love to ultimately make my way through that, and that's all. Weapons? Yeah, it was okay. It was good. I don't think it's the scariest ever. From what I've seen, I do love Amy Madigan, and I love the part she played. Will I see their kind of prequel they're thinking of doing with just her character? Yeah, maybe. Anyway, I wasn't underwhelmed. I did enjoy it, and I feel kind of neutral about it. It was an interesting story. So I'm just gonna drop those few things and say that's it for now. And I'll talk to you guys later. I think Mark was leaving his thing about my sister's The Haunting of Hill House. Oh, it was so fantastic. Really, really enjoyable for the Halloween season this year. Okay, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.
Yeah, think of all the things we set out in life to do, and if we don't do it very well, we don't just get, in most cases, we don't just get chance after chance to do it again and again and again until we get it right. I mean, I don't know if in some of these movies, if they can't get the continuity right, or they're not doing a very good job at it, as opposed to just trashing it and completely starting all over again, why don't we get competent people from the get-go, good writers, right? It's kind of like cheating. You claim you're going to make an Exorcist trilogy. The first one doesn't really go over well, or it doesn't make as much money as you want it to make. So you've completely scrapped it. And now here we go. We're going to start from scratch again. I just picture this like pile of old films out back, just piling up. Midsummer is a brutal movie, Grim. Showing that maybe to even someone who especially isn't, is kind of new in the horror genre. I don't know. That's a tough watch for some. I can totally get that. Or maybe your friend didn't like it as much. But so great to hear from you again, Grim Kim. Welcome back. And we hope to hear from you again real soon. Deep Death Dive. So today's Deep Death Dive, you guessed it, continuity. Here we are in 2025, and it's not bad enough that everything around us is, well, disposable. This marriage doesn't work, end it. This appliance doesn't really work right anymore than it did a week ago. Trash it. Sadly, this is where Hollywood has ended up in popular franchises anymore. They just scrap things and start from scratch if it doesn't make the estimated profit. They just consider it bad and start over. In 1988, Mustafa Akkad tried to revive the story of Michael Myers, bringing John Carpenter and Deborah Hill into the fold. Carpenter never wanted to make part 2 and was very clear. He handed the directorial wand over to Rick Rosenthal. When Carpenter became involved with part 3, he had an idea that was ahead of its time for 1982. He wanted to make a Halloween film every year with a standalone story. Oh, what could have been. But Jason and the Friday the 13th bunch were off and running. Freddy Krueger was about to claw his way into the scene, and the Monster Kids, well, the majority of us just didn't want an anthology film. They wanted the silent, pasty-faced killer to somehow rise up out of the ashes, literally. Seeing that Carpenter meant Halloween 2's end to be the final. So in 1988, when Mustafa Akkad got Carpenter to hear him out, plus throw buckets of money at him, we almost got there. He even had Jamie Lee Curtis's attention, but alas, Carpenter had very different ideas for the story of Myers' return. Akkad and he could not agree, so once again, they parted ways. And there was no deal. With that, Jamie Lee Curtis also walked. So Akkad put Dwight H. Little at the director's helm and brought on 3 writers to conjure Myers back. Donald Pleasance returned as Loomis. I Know Michael and Loomis were last seen in a hospital explosion. The first and biggest hurdle for these 3 writers to face: continuity. There was an explosion. All involved were assumed dead. Figure it out. Write them back. Kind of like when Annie Wilkes made Paul Sheldon figure out how to bring Misery back from the dead. Then, the biggest twist of all, that ending that they had for part 4. Wow. Okay, now what? Well, first let's talk about the success of part 4. It was far beyond what they thought it would be, so part 5 was rushed into production. It would have to be released the following year at Halloween time. Mistake 1. Akkad took on a different director, who rumor says was unfamiliar with the films of the franchise, and a new writer who at the beginning of production had not finished the script. The twist ending that was in part 4 was written off and excused lamely, I might add, so that they could begin a retread of what we had seen a year ago. Just not done well at all. There were some bold movements made here, not that they all work, but this film does have its audience. One of the bold moves was to take the usually killed off quickly, bubbly, air-headed girl and make her the final girl. Another was to add unnecessary comic relief with 2 Keystone Cops equipped with squeaky noise music and all. There are some scenes and elements to this chapter that I like, but the biggest corner that the writer painted the story into was with the addition of a mystical character stalking Michael Myers dressed in black, sporting a birthmark or tattoo that Myers also bore, and toting a machine gun. By the end of this picture, the character's identity and motive is never made clear. Halloween 5 was a story mess. It nearly crippled the franchise. It would be 6 years before Part 6 would be released. Most fans at this point, myself included, had all but given up hope. Many scripts were written in this time by quote-unquote professionals and rejected. I myself wrote and filmed a fan film before there were fan films, sometime in 1992 or 93. But all the submitted professional entries were cast aside. It would be, however, a fan like myself that would attempt to answer all the wonky questions Part 5 had created. He got the job. His name was Daniel Ferenz. Now let me say, if you're ever able to get the time to read his original script, and I believe it's online, it's excellent. Written by a fan who loved these characters and wanted to see justice done to this story that had been so badly polluted. Unfortunately, what made it to the screen was anything but his original script. Why, you ask? Because the film was being produced by the Weinsteins. Bob and Harvey had their big fat fingers in the edits and cuts. I've also heard what was supposed to be the score to that film was replaced. The final version that ended up in theaters was a horrific mess. However, a producer's cut circulated through conventions for years. I bought a VHS copy back in the day. A lot of that version is far more coherent and closer to the original script. Now, the producer's cut has been marketed and released on Blu-ray. 3 years later, after the success of Scream, Halloween, 20 years later, was created. Jamie Lee Curtis was back on board, and so began the birth of ignoring continuity. Well, to a point. They decided to ignore everything that came after Part 1 and 2 and make a brand new Part 3. But just like the studio's mistake of rushing Part 5 a year after Part 4, Halloween 20 years later did the same and rushed Resurrection into production, which then stole the Pooh Parade crown from Part 5 and wore it proudly. Then we got Rob Zombie's reboots. That killed the franchise for 9 more years. When we got David Gordon Green, again wiping all the sequels clean to make a new trilogy that only followed the original 1978 version. I like Green's films, but there seems to be an awful lot of spent storylines out there now, and we're only talking about Halloween. I miss you, continuity.
Is this something you can share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry?
Greetings, Dark Mark and Karis the Little Mummy. Scary Larry here, checking in. Finally got my TV set up, got my Amazon Fire Stick back up and running, so I was able to catch a couple things, and let's go over it. As far as continuity, there's one thing that had bothered me. Big fan of the Evil Dead trilogy, and there's just some continuity problems going from the first one to the second one to the Army of Darkness. But overall, I don't take points away from it because the rest of the movie's phenomenal. So, yeah, I do prefer if you're going to do a series, do some continuity, keep to the storyline. Again, rehashing Phantasm. They're great about picking up exactly where they left off at the end of each movie to the beginning of the next. It's great. This week I managed to watch, first I watched The Substance with Demi Moore and Dennis Quaid. I love the movie. Bit long, but I was giving some criticism about it to Dark Mark, and so I would give this, without giving away any spoilers, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, I'm not sure. I would give it 3.25 stars. I'd give it higher, but I couldn't get past. There's some medical procedures in there that the actress in it is doing, and her doppelganger, I'll call it. They were just doing some major surgery with no training, no knowledge, no nothing. And then the doppelganger was also doing some massive remodeling of a house that I'm like, where'd she pick up this training? So, stuff like that, along with continuity, making it, even though they're horror movies and a lot of it is fantasy, make it seem real. Make people, being able to handle what they can handle and not do stuff that they've never been trained to do. That's just my take. And then Prime Video and some others, when you have the Fire Stick, will say, since you watched this, you might like this, or we want to bring this to your attention. I saw this one ad, and it's called Spooktacular, and I'm like, never heard of it. It was come out in 2025, and it looked like a dollar store Jason from Friday the 13th, but standing next to him was a rather young Linda Blair, and that was the cover over the title. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I clicked on it, and I was so glad I did. This is an actual documentary that just got released on Prime, and it's about the original Spooky World in Berlin, Massachusetts. The background behind it, how they came up with the concept, how it evolved over the years, and how it ultimately got shut down by basically the Berlin townsfolk who just thought enough was enough. And basically a bunch of Karens and Debbie Downers did some underhanded stuff, in my opinion, to shut it down. I give that documentary 4 stars just because it touches on a part of Massachusetts that a lot of us are familiar with. And I do highly recommend both movie and that documentary. That's all I got this week.
Laura Horror and I went out to Spooky World in Berlin, Mass. In the 90s. I think it was the early 90s. And Jason Goes to Hell had just come out. And so we met Kane Hodder, Jason himself. I got an autographed picture from him for $5. I met him again a couple of years ago at a convention with my son, Jack-O-Lantern. Jack-O-Lantern got his autographed picture, and it was $50. I told him my story and said $5 to $50, that's a jump. Kane told me back then they were guaranteed and given $10,000 just to be there. And that is anything but the case now. And unfortunately, to make any kind of decent money, this is how it has to be. The Substance, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I reviewed it back on Macabrecast episode 113. If anyone's interested in what I thought of The Substance. Always a pleasure, Scary Larry. Hoping to hear from you once again on the regular. Have a great week.
And now, boils and ghouls, it's that point in the show where I suggest to you that maybe you cover the ears of your small children as the Queen of Horror takes the microphone.
Why are you talking like that?
Talking like what?
Queen of Horror? What's that?
What's what?
Horror?
That's what Metal Melody says, horror. Some kind of Medford, Mass accent or something. Don't you listen to when she speaks? Open your eyes, jackass.
The following program is rated TV MALV. It contains strong language and violence. It is intended only for mature audiences.
Hello, Doc Mark, Karis the Little Mummy, and all the Macabrecast fans listening. This is Metal Melody. So, I haven't seen too many movies. Well, I've seen nothing at the cinema lately because there's been nothing out, but I've seen some things on TV. But first, I'd like to know, actually say to Karis, yes, we can be friends, and I will never forgive you. Yeah. So now that that's done, I seen a movie called Abraham's Boys, A Dracula Story. It's new. It's a 2025 horror film based on Joe Hill's short story, serving as a sequel to Bram Stoker's Dracula. Pretty much it's 2 decades later. Mina and Dr. Abram Van Helsing are married. They're living in California somewhere with their 2 boys. They're older, and the kids have heard stories of dark things that haunt at night and stuff like that. So they moved to a more isolated location to try to get away from these things. The movie it wasn't like it was a scary movie or it was like about a lot of vampire and biting. It was more of a story and how these boys came about to find out what's actually going on with their mother and father. It was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. I can't remember if I saw it on Netflix or where I saw it, but I enjoyed it. Another movie I saw was The Shed, which I believe Mark said he had done a review on this a while back, but I have just seen it recently, which is pretty much about a vampire that seeks shelter in this boy who lives with his grandfather's shed in the back. And I wasn't going to watch it at first. It was on Shudder because I was like, the shed, like, it sounds kind of corny. But it was actually a good movie. I was surprised. Like, sometimes you see things like that on Shudder or wherever, and you're like, okay, that doesn't sound like it's going to be good. Or just by the title alone will turn you off, and you're like, okay, that's going to be dumb. But like I said, those movies, like, sometimes they surprise you and they end up being good, and you're like, wow, okay. That's why I watch things like this now, though, because you never know. So I always give them the benefit. So like I said, another good movie. I really enjoyed Frankenstein. That was the movie that was on Netflix. I know a lot of people don't like. Frankenstein was written and directed by, and I'm going to try this, Guillermo del Toro. I don't know if I said that right. It sounded okay. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was good, and it was nothing like Shape of Water, that's for sure. People like, oh, he's not going to do him good or blah, blah, blah. But I can tell you, in my opinion, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching this. It's a lot different from your original Frankenstein movie, of course. But I kind of liked that it was different. In some areas, I didn't like that it was so different, but then in other ways, I did like it that it was so different. I thought it was a good movie, though. There was never a point where it bored me. I wanted to shut it off. I thought the ending was beautiful. For those who've seen it or are going to see it, they'll see what I'm talking about. It was a sad movie. It was almost like a love story between Frankenstein and his monster. So, yeah, that's all I have for right now. I do plan on watching the VHS Halloween Shudder that Mark talked about. That sounds interesting. As far as the topic for episode 131 regarding continuity versus, I think you called it like fast food franchise junk or whatever it was, continuity all the way for me. I don't like this, like you gave example, Halloween, like 20 years later and just put stuff out there that didn't work before and change the rules. Like, no. Keep it the same, or like just stop it. Like, stop the madness. That's all. And also, I appreciate and enjoyed hearing your story of Dudley Road because I have never heard about that before. And I grew up in Lawrence Methuen area till I was about 17 years old, and I didn't know anything about it and still haven't through my life until I heard it on your show. So that was pretty interesting. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. But that's about it. I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Everybody take care, stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
So Abraham's Boys is a sequel to the OG Dracula. That sounds like a big undertaking, and tough to, when you're comparing it up against the original. The Shed was better than I ever thought it would be. I reviewed that a while back. I really enjoyed it. It kind of caught me off guard. I thought it was really good. And Frankenstein, Del Toro's Frankenstein, I know you said you liked a lot. I did a review of that earlier. So as you know, we're kind of in the same boat. See, some of these directors, like M. Shamalama Ding Dong, sometimes he hits it out of the park too. Just because generally, sometimes I may not like what a director does, or a lot of their films I don't like, doesn't mean they can't come across with a film that I actually like. And Del Toro did it. Yes, this was no Shape of Water, and I agree, it was a good film, as I said earlier. Continuity, not everyone was good at it back in the day, obviously. But it made for some made for a tough challenge for writing. Well, some of the movies made it that way, or some of the other writers made it tough for writers. And Dudley Road now looks nothing like Dudley Road did back when I was a teenager. Because when I went down there, the road, I know one end of it wasn't even labeled with a street sign. It was completely dirt road. Massive trees hanging over on the road, like claws, trying to pull your car back. And you could not fit 2 cars down that road. And there were no houses anywhere. And I don't care what anyone says. That sinking house, first of all, if you go to Dudley Road now where it's all paved and you see this little shed that's kind of hidden a little bit by a grass mound that everyone says is the shrinking house, that is not the sinking house. And I saw the sinking house. I don't know what happened to it or where it was, but this sucker was sunk down up into the second floor windows. And it was the creepiest looking thing I had ever seen, and I never forgot it. And we used to go in the pitch black. There were no lights on that road. Scared myself silly going there. But that foolish thing that people take pictures of all the time and say the sinking house is not the sinking house. I saw the sinking house. Where is the sinking house now? I'm sunk? I don't know. But people can't find it now, but I saw it, and I was there. So great to hear from you, Metal Melody. Hoping to hear from you again next week.
Don't touch that dial, monster kids.
Yeah, you don't know where it's been.
Pipe down. It's almost time for the final thought.
Not quite, bro. Not before. Cobwebbed classics.
Ooh, yeah. Cobwebbed classics.
Welcome to Cobwebbed Classics, where I dust off a lost, forgotten, or just plain unappreciated film and introduce it to, or maybe just remind you about it, so your spooky Saturday night might run a little creepier. This week's Cobwebbed Classic is 1946's Bedlam, directed by Mark Robson, starring Boris Karloff, Anna Lee, and Billy House. In the 18th century, a woman named Nell wants to help change conditions of the notorious St. Mary's of Bethlehem Insane Asylum. But not if George Sims, played by Boris Karloff, has any say in it. Sims has Nell committed and locked away. Dark atmosphere, drama, and shock dominate this lesser-known Val Lewton classic. The dress you see Anna wearing when she mounts the horse is the dress Vivian Lee's character Scarlett made from curtains in Gone with the Wind. This was filmed between July 18th and August 17th of 1945 and would be the last collaboration between Karloff and Val Lewton, although rumors said for years that this film has been banned in the UK. That was untrue. Taglines for this gem are as follows.
Sensational secrets of the infamous madhouse exposed.
1946's Bedlam is this week's
Cobwebbed Classics.
Goditi questo episodio de Cast Macabro.
Thank you, Maria Monstalia, for telling our Italian friends to enjoy this episode of Macabrecast. Out here in the real world, away from all the Hollywood lights, many of us would love to David Gordon Green the continuity of our own lives. Some have, and good for them. I hope your end will have a better reception than Halloween Ends got anyway. Some of us are trying to figure out a comprehensive way around or out of the Halloween Part 5 of our lives. And that may never happen. But don't give up hope or lose sight. Keep plugging away at your continuity script until it's the best it can be. And hopefully, the Weinsteins in your life will keep their fat fingers out of the editing room. Steven Tyler once sang, "The light at the end of the tunnel just might be you." Beware the moon. Keep clear of the moors. But most of all, remember, be good to yourself. This is Dark Mark, signing off. See you soon, I hope.
This is a Macabre Theater production.
Subscribe us.